He beat Gascon, large margin. Let me start with asking, were there any surprises for you in terms of the outcome of that race?
No, not really. The evidence was pretty clear that that California was turning to the right with respect to criminal justice issues. So it was pretty clear, probably from early fall, that that was going to be the outcome of the race.
What do you think, though, happened between surviving those two recall efforts? I mean, there were folks who were very unhappy with George Gascon pretty much from the beginning of his term, but yet he was able to survive those. What changed in that intervening time period from that second recall to the election on Tuesday?
Well, you'll recall, Areva, that there weren't very many people that voted in the recall elections, um, and that it wasn't a true reflection of how many people were going to be in the electorate in the general election, like what we saw on Tuesday. Also, Areva, you'll remember that there were some high-profile um, criminal justice cases that came up that got a lot of media attention, and I think it really hurt them. One of them you may remember, um, Clarence Avant's wife was killed. And so there was a lot of media attention on that, and the fact that Gascon didn't immediately file special circumstance allegations in that case. There was also another case where a juvenile who transitioned into a woman was released from custody after sexually assaulting a young woman, a young girl, in a fast food restaurant. And so those were two seminal issues that really put Gascon under the gun with respect to how the public was viewing him and how the public was viewing public safety in LA County as a whole.
The other thing that happened in LA or across the state, not just LA, but in California, was the approval of a measure now that changes certain property theft from a misdemeanor to a felony. Describe for us what that ballot initiative was and what it signals, again, given that this ballot measure passed pretty handsomely.
So, Areva, you'll recall Prop 47 was passed here in California that reduced penalties for a number of nonviolent felonies, which included retail theft, property crimes. And so what we've seen in California and in some other places around the country, that a lot of people were taking advantage of the fact that they would not be charged with a felony for stealing under a certain number or certain amount of money from particular stores, 7-Elevens, Ross discount stores here in California, all these different department stores. And I think the public got very upset regarding seeing people walking out of the stores with goods. We saw a lot of high profile smash and grab robberies where young people were stealing things. And the big thing, Areva, and I think you may co-sign on this, is that the stores, drug stores, grocery stores, began locking up deodorant, other items that you can't get to without calling an attendant anymore. And so that all kind of snowballed into this movement to try to change back the amount of money that it would that you could steal that could get you a felony offense. So that was one of the things. And the other big thing, Areva, that Prop 36 does, it makes it the ability for prosecutors to go after people who are selling fentanyl. Um, and that was a
But
big
why do we
problem
need a
here in
special
California.
law for that, Bobby? Isn't it already a crime to sell fentanyl? Isn't it already considered a drug?
Yes, but there were some gaps in that in terms of whether you could prosecute people for using fentanyl as opposed to selling fentanyl and the amount that would be available there. Fentanyl is a little bit of a different drug than some of the other drugs that are commonly used by people, because if you use fentanyl for your own private use, um, it can harm you, but more importantly, it can harm other people that are around you who are not using the fentanyl. And there's been some high profile cases here in California where people using fentanyl ended up killing their children who were in the presence of it, got sick through it. Also, you may remember in the last couple of weeks, we've had a number of inmates in the county jail who have fell ill because of the use of fentanyl. And so it's a much more dangerous drug than some of the other drugs that we have for personal use. And so 36 seeks to address that and make it easier to go after people who are selling and using fentanyl as a felony.
But hold on, I'm just trying to understand it. So fentanyl is it a prescription medication, correct?
I don't think that it is a licensed prescription drug by itself. Fentanyl is present in other drugs, but the way that people are using or getting fentanyl now is made illegally in countries like Mexico and then brought here into the United States. So you cannot buy the drug fentanyl over the counter. You would have to get a prescription for fentanyl. And then fentanyl is in a lot of other drugs that are legal, but people have figured out how to make fentanyl illegally and then sell fentanyl on its own, and it's very dangerous.
Okay, so Prop 36 gives prosecutors more latitude to prosecute those who both sell and possess fentanyl.
Correct. So it gives you the prosecutors more leeway to go after people for that particular drug. 36 does not allow people to that are just using cocaine or using marijuana or some other what we call recreational drugs. You will not. The prosecutors will not be able to charge those as a felony.
Wow. So a lot
Only
of folks
fentanyl.
only fentanyl. Okay. A lot of folks are saying that Prop 36 was also needed to address the homeless crisis. Is that the tie-in to homelessness? Is this greater ability to prosecute sellers and users of fentanyl? And somehow that's going to impact, and that's the belief of those proponents, that will reduce homelessness?
No, you know as well as I do, Areva, that a lot of these propositions in California are wrongly named, and certain aspects of it are wrongly focused on in terms of what they actually do. Prop 36 isn't going to have any impact, I don't believe, on homelessness unless there's some monies tied to being able to provide people with resources related to drug diversion and those kind of things, which I think is part of this bill, is that some money will go to, is a big problem here in California because there's not enough access to drug
I think we're having some
rehabilitation
issues.
centers across the state and across.
We're having some issues with your audio, Bobby. We're going to take some commercials at this point. And when we come forward, we're going to continue this conversation about the outcome of the election, particularly in California, looking at some of those key congressional races. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580, when we come forward.
You're listening to Areva Martin in real time on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is a story of the one. As a maintenance specialist for university housing, he knows college students can major in wear and tear. Plus, housing so many students doesn't leave a lot of room to house all the supplies he needs. That's where Grainger comes in. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast, dependable delivery, Grainger carries the quality products he needs so he doesn't have to. From a new door hinge to a whole new faucet. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Febreze. As a rideshare driver, I love keeping my car smelling fresh and clean. So when I'm driving, I only trust Febreze car vent clips, featuring 3 distinct intensity settings, because it's that little touch that sets me apart. I can turn the intensity down for subtle freshness, or I can turn it up for when I want lots of scent. So whether it's set to low, medium, or high, with Febreze car, I know my car's going to smell amazing. Which keeps my driver rating right where it belongs. Picking up, Oscar!
Chevy Red Tag Radio 30, code GWMR 0394000.
This season, Chevy brings classic pairings, cookies and milk, mistletoe and kisses, and your holiday plans and a new Chevy. Silverado 1500 gives you power and capability with 430 pound-feet of torque to haul your holiday tree. Equinox EV and the all-new Equinox offer award-winning quality and style to see you through the holiday season. See why Chevy makes everything better and brighter. Chevrolet, together let's drive.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We are back with Bobby Grace talking about these key races in California. California has been the focus of so much attention because there are, 6 congressional races that Democrats were hoping to pick up some large percentage of in order to flip the House and get to that lucky number of 218. It is not looking good, Bobby. The 13th congressional district, Central Valley, the candidate there, the Democratic candidate, Adam Gray, is down. Rudy Salas in the 22nd congressional district, he's down. George Whiteside in the 27th is down. Will Rollins in the 41st is kind of neck and neck with the Republican in that district. In the 45th, which is miles inland from the coast in Orange County, Attorney Derek Tran is challenging the Republican Michelle Steele, and Steele is ahead with 52% of the vote. The 47th district, Republican Scott Bow is fighting against David Min, again, a part of Orange County. This is Katie Porter's old seat, and Scott Bow is ahead 50.6%, 50.6. So these 6 races, congressional races that were targeted by the DCCC. We had Hakeem Jeffries out, Bill Clinton was out. A lot of money poured into these races, and all of the Dems are seemingly losing. What is this telling us about California?
Well, Areva, you know that all of those districts are not or have not historically been favorable for us in terms of voting Democrat. In the last election, the 2 election cycles before, especially with Katie Porter, we had some breakthroughs in Orange County, but historically, they have not been good for us. So your guest, Isaac, kind of broke it down in terms of, what Bill Clinton said many, many years ago. It's the economy, stupid. And so the economy, I think, is trumping, hate to use his name, but the economy is trumping everything. And it's causing us to be in tight races where we should win, and we're getting trounced in cases where we have historically not done well. And I think, Areva, that you and your guest touched on it really well. That the Democrats assumed that young people were going to just automatically vote Democratic, and that just has not been the case. Particularly young people who are not going to college. And so we've got to figure out a way as Democrats, even here in California, how to communicate with that particular block of young people. How do we get to them? How do we send a message that the Democratic Party is better for them going forward?
Yeah, I want to go back to criminal justice because that's an issue that I expected, Bobby, would motivate young voters, particularly young Black, young Latino voters, not just in California, but across the state. And then when you look at, I'm sorry, not across the state, but across the country. But when you look at the passage of Prop 36, you look at the win by Nathan Hochman, it signals that we are headed back into kind of this tough on crime, law and order kind of approach to crime, even though nationally and in California, violent crime rates are down. What are you feeling about what happens in a state like California where we oust a progressive district attorney like George Gascon, we elect a Republican, even though he says he changed parties, and in the same election, we passed Prop 36?
Well, Areva, I think, again, you kind of hit it on the nail on the head earlier when you were talking with your guest, Isaac. He kind of broke it down that younger people aren't necessarily seeing progressive trends with respect to criminal justice issues as being their bread and butter issue right now. They're more concerned with the economy and we're talking about people who are actually going and voting in the polls, right? So, young people here in California and across the country, their pocketbooks are hurting because they may have a job, but as we know here in California, we have young people who are working 2-3 jobs and having difficulty to be able to pay rent and those kind of things. And when that, or at least the perception of that, is paramount in a political election, that becomes death for either party. Whatever party's in office at the time that economic tumult happens, they're going to bear the brunt of the trend. And criminal justice is not on the top of young people's minds right now.
Right. So even if you set aside young voters, Prop 36 won with an overwhelming majority of voters. So obviously not just young voters, older voters, middle-aged voters, Black and white, voted for Prop 36, suggesting that California wants to go back to an era where, possibly where we were in 2011 when the Supreme Court ordered us to reduce our prison population. Do you have any concern that we're going to just blow our jails back up, our prisons back up because of Prop 36?
No, I'm hopeful. I'll confess that I was a Hochman supporter. I think that because he was a defense attorney, that he's kind of clued into the fact that he doesn't want to return to this idea of mass incarceration. I know that the state legislature does not want to return to an era of mass incarceration. And I don't think the general public wants that. I think they want to see people held accountable for the crimes that they're seeing happening in their communities. But I will tell you that I don't think that law enforcement wants to go back to a time where people that are homeless are being locked up, that people that are committing crimes in terms of trying to feed their family, so they're stealing something to feed their family. I don't think that law enforcement wants to see that. I think they do want to see people who are stealing, luxury items and those kind of things and committing violent crime. They want to see those people prosecuted. But I don't, Areva, I don't predict that California is going to go back to a time where we're just locking people up just to be locking people up in prison. And I'm confident that the state legislature doesn't want to go there.
Well, thank you so much, Bobby, for your time and your analysis. And I hope you're right. I hope we do not return to that period in 2011 in particular, when our prison population was so bloated that literally the Supreme Court had to order California to reduce its prison population. All right, we have been doing post-mortem on the election for the last 2 days, ever since we got the results. And of course, no one expected Kamala Harris to lose, and definitely did not expect that Democrats would lose both the presidency, the Senate, and be in a position where we are now, where it's very, very possible and probably probable that we're going to lose the House of Representatives. But we have an opportunity. When you lose, you got to go back to the drawing board. You have to do an audit. You have to do an autopsy. You got to dig into your data, dig into those numbers. You got to look at those voters. And for Dems, that means we got to find those 15 million voters that voted in 2020, that sat it out, that absolutely either didn't go to the polls at all or definitely didn't vote in the presidential election. Something terribly wrong happened between 20 and 2024. There's a lot of blame to go around. We already see folks are out, the pundits pointing the finger at everyone. And I told a group of friends this morning, blaming Joe Biden is like blaming your mother for birthing you. Let's not forget that Joe Biden saved this country in 2020. He was mourning the loss of his son, Beau, and we didn't have a formidable candidate that could take on Donald Trump. And Joe Biden stepped up, and he gave us the first African-American Supreme Court justice. He gave us the first African-American vice president. He gave us infrastructure. He put the economy back on track after Donald Trump had tanked the economy because of his debacle with the pandemic. So don't have a short memory about all the wonderful things that Joe Biden has done. I think when history is written, they're going to write that he was one of the best presidents, definitely for African Americans, the lowest unemployment rate for Black folks, the forgiving of student loan debt, the historical commitment of federal funding to HBCUs, the shortening or closing of the wealth gap between Black and white families. The list just goes on and on. It is not the outcome we wanted. Kamala Harris, good friend, family friend. You guys know I worked my butt off to get her elected. Terribly disappointed, but I know she's resilient. I know she is strong, and I know she's going to come back stronger than ever. We don't know. Some folks are saying Kamala Harris for governor for the great state of California. She may run for president again. I don't know. She's talented. She obviously has lots of relationships. She can raise money with the best of them. She's charismatic, and she is someone who has dedicated her life to public service. So I just want to say thank you, Kamala, for what you did for this country. Thank you for running. Thank you for running a near flawless campaign. And thank you for repping for Black women all over this country. All right, that's it for me. The next voice that you hear will be Robin Ayers in the Raw Report right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Stay with us.
The White House is defending President Biden for not jumping out of the race sooner after Kamala Harris's defeat. Black White House Press Secretary